Good morning. Thanks to all of you for coming. My name is Cassius Smith. I'm on staff with TWR, which used to be called Transworld Radio, and I'm here to talk about how we made Asterisk work for us throughout the world. If you have questions, we'll probably have some time at the very end. But if you have some burning question, hold up your hand, and I'll Jared's got a roving mic, so we can get your full audio on the recording. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Working with TWR is my second career. I retired from Northrop Grumman after 32 years in aerospace industry. And my wife and I were looking to volunteer for a Christian nonprofit, and long story short, we got connected with TWR. During my industry years, I got to work on some really cool projects. I wrote device drivers for NASA satellites. I got to work on some real-time on-orbit satellite software. That was a canceled program by NASA, by the way. I directed and developed projects for guided missile communications systems. I got to work on high reliability data networks, and I've been a Linux user since the mid-1990s. I started with Slackware and have worked with a lot of different distros since then. When TWR was looking for some help with Asterisk, I came along and we got connected. I've been there about 3 years. I'm older than I look. My first rock concert was the Beatles in 1965, and yeah, they were awesome. Tickets were, believe it or not, $7. And I'm also old enough to recognize what one of these is. I saw this in Japan about 3 weeks ago when I was visiting my daughter there. And you just don't see these around here anymore, and you really don't see a bank of them in a shopping mall. So that was kind of interesting. Well, TWR is not your typical missions organization. We're the farthest reaching Christian media network in the world. We produce content, gospel-based content, in 230 languages, and we have a presence in 160 countries. In partnership with over 60 other ministries around the world, we translate and produce gospel-based media into the heart language of our target audiences, and we produce it in the media platform that is most appropriate to their culture. We started off with radio, but now we've expanded into a lot of other kinds of media and distribution methods. As I mentioned, TWR produces media in 230 languages. And with this kind of international footprint, you can see why worldwide economical communication is so important to us. TWR has 4 regional offices. Our Americas office is in North Carolina. Our Europe office is in Vienna, Austria. Our Africa office is in Johannesburg. And our Asia office is in Singapore. We also have 4 broadcast sites in Bonaire in the Netherlands Antilles, in Maritso, Guam, Manzini, Swaziland. I call it the land that the internet forgot. And in Benin in West Africa. We have a lot of other partner ministries around the world, but 2 other sites that I'm going to mention are Canada and the Netherlands, because we ended up putting Asterisk there also. In 2009, this is what our phone systems looked like. Our US office had a Cisco call manager system with 160 endpoints. And you might notice Swaziland has an Asterisk logo there. An IT guy had installed a Trixbox server there many years before. I was told that every 3 weeks, they just went and power cycled it because it just hung up. But it had been running that way for years. All of the rest of the sites were Carroll or Panasonic keyset systems that didn't have any kind of trunking. They were all isolated, and they were all getting very old. But most importantly was the isolation, because the international toll charges were eating us alive. Now, our CIO had a vision, and that was four-digit dialing throughout the world. And the original concept was, hey, let's do this with Cisco Call Manager. Well, we're a nonprofit, and there isn't enough money to do that. So what could we do? Well, we knew that Asterisk was a stable open source platform, and we could build a PBX solution for us, for our local office anyway, out of that. But the big question was, could we use it with the existing Cisco phones in our US office? And if we could, then we could start a worldwide Asterisk project and achieve the vision of four-digit worldwide dialing and reduce our cost of ownership. So in January of 2010, I did a proof of principle project for the CIO. I built up an Asterisk server. I reflashed a handful of the 7900 series phones that we had. I connected that server with an analog line to the Cisco Call Manager, and then I demonstrated it to the CIO. So he was satisfied that we could make this thing work. Then I laid out a budget and a schedule and deadlines, a project plan for the initial install. And that first phase of the project was completed on July 30th of that year. Here's the material budget for that first install. I wanted to host Asterisk on new hardware, so I bought a Dell 8-core PowerEdge server. I bought new Polycom voice station speakerphones because there was no way to reflash the Cisco speakerphones. For the receptionist, I used a Linksys SPA962 with a couple of extension sidecars, and I bought Linksys SPA942s for the handful of secretaries. And I bought a Digium dual span PRI card with hardware echo cancellation, and I'll talk about the dual span after a little bit. Here's what the receptionist phone looked like while we were rolling it out. And here's one of the phones that I reflashed with SIP. There was a lot of trial and error involved with this, and I finally ran across a great blog by Warren Selby, who is here, and that really helped me to crack the Cisco phone secrets. And after rolling out Asterisk in our US office, then I started with other locations. And most of the time, it was just where I happened to be in the world that I installed Asterisk, but a couple of them were forced by office moves. So, for example, the Singapore office was moving across town, and they needed a new phone system anyway, so I went and installed Asterisk there. And here's what our current Asterisk network looks like. We have EECS or SIP trunks. All of the remote sites have EECS or SIP trunks into North Carolina. And here's a summary of our costs for the entire global rollout. I didn't show labor here because I volunteer for this work, but if you're going to implement Asterisk, you're going to need to either take that into account or find a volunteer. But the important number here is we spent $103 per endpoint for our entire install. Now compare that with the original Cisco system that we had in North Carolina, which cost $200,000 and worked out to $1,250 an endpoint. So Asterisk is pretty cost effective for us. We've paid for most of this just by eliminating our Cisco maintenance contracts. Now remember, I had never done this before, and I had a lot of challenges getting to where we are today. I wanted to share with you some of my top challenges. This is the view from an antenna rigger that we have working out on Guam. He's 375 feet in the air. My first challenge was where to start. I understood IT, I understood communications, I understood Linux, but I had never worked with Asterisk before. And this is how I saw Asterisk. They had a great deal of potential, but I needed that little instruction sheet that tells you how to put these things together. So what I did was I signed up for Digium authorized training, and that's where I met Jared. At the time, I lived very close to Digium, so it was really convenient for me to attend the instructor-led classes. Both of those classes were excellent. I took both of them, and I also made a lot of use of the O'Reilly books. There's a wealth of information there. But the DCAP exam just about killed me, and Jared's my witness. Telephone diversity was another problem that I faced. I started off with a bunch of Cisco 7961s, Cisco 7942s. We also had a bunch of Cisco 7912s. Remember, for the secretaries and the receptionists, I bought Linksys phones. And then we had the Polycom speakerphones. So I have 5 different kinds of phones all at one site. Now, all of this makes bulk provisioning kind of difficult. And we don't have a perfect solution for this yet, but we have started to standardize on the Linksys 942, but that's no longer made, and the Cisco 504G, which you can still buy. And those phones are virtually identical as far as the user interface. Another challenge was bulk provisioning these phones. I had to handcraft the XML files for those first handful of phones that I reflashed during that proof of principle project. But how do you do that for 160 phones and get these things online in the course of a weekend? Well, Bin Shell came to my rescue. I built a master phone list that had the usernames and the extensions and the other phone parameters that were needed to provision that phone and build the XML file. Then I had template files for each type of phone, and those are generic boilerplates, and these have parameter names instead of the values. A script reads both of these files and substitutes the parameter names with the values, and then generates a Mac-specific XML file for each one of the phones. That gets loaded on the TFTP server, and voila, everything works. Here's what the master phone list file looks like. It's an eye chart, I know, but that's what it looks like for our Singapore office. I have basically just all the necessary parameters for the phone in a big Excel spreadsheet. Remember, this was my first production server at the main US headquarters of a company that I had only worked with for a couple of months. I really wanted to do some live testing before we cut over. So here's how I did that. Our call manager system had a single PRI to the public network. This gives us our 23 channels of voice. All the endpoints, of course, spoke skinny to the call manager. And back when I was planning to do the install, a DCAP friend of mine, Rod Montgomery, suggested that I get a dual span PRI card. So now this investment was going to pay off. 2 weeks prior to the cutover, I installed Asterisk between our call manager system and the public network. So to the call manager, Asterisk looked like the phone company. And to the phone company, Asterisk looked like our old call manager. All the incoming calls from the phone company came in as 4 digits, and I just passed those along to the call manager. All the 7 digits or longer calls, I passed out to the phone company. We ran this way for 2 weeks. Nobody outside of the IT group even knew that this had happened. So it was very transparent to the users. In the meantime, during those 2 weeks, I trained the staff on the new system, and for my training, I homed several of the phones back to the Asterisk system so I could use them both in parallel. So this was a big help for me. On cutover Friday, I recruited a couple of guys from the IT group, and we went around and did a factory reset on all of the Cisco phones, and that forced a SIP reload of all of their firmware. I loaded up the production dial plan where 4-digit calls went to the endpoints, 7 or more digit calls went to the phone company. And the Cisco phones all registered with Asterisk, and we were done after about 5 hours. Now, I had planned for the whole weekend to be spent working on the cutover, and we were done on Friday night. So the transition went very, very smoothly. And we took Cisco Call Manager out and decommissioned it the next day. You might wonder, what do you do with old Cisco hardware? There was no salvage value. So here's what I did with this. This is my favorite repurposing ever. So I've got Asterisk running on this. This box is located at API Digital, an ISP in Huntsville, Alabama. And this is how I connect remote offices not remote offices, but remote users that work out of their home. You saw from my map that I've got servers all over the world. Each one of those offices is in a different country. Every country's got different holiday schedules. I know from experience that South Africa does not take the 4th of July off. And in Singapore, Chinese New Year's is a 3-day shutdown. So how do I deal with that and use dial plan code to deal with holiday closure kind of messages? Well, the Asterisk database gives a really good solution here. So I have a database tree where I have all the holidays loaded, and this is customized for each office. So as soon as the office publishes their holiday schedule for the year, I load it into the database. And then the dial plan code is all the same. For this little segment, the first line takes the current date and formats it up into a date variable. Then it checks to see if today is a holiday. And if it is, then it sets a holiday menu variable, and then it jumps farther down and plays that file. And basically, the holiday menu says, "Welcome to TWR, Singapore, we're closed for the holiday." So I made it very easy. And this is the script that I use to stuff the holiday schedule into the database. And it is just very, very simple. I have to do this once a year. So when you're managing 9 servers, little tools like this really help. Some of our overseas offices have to deal with at least 2 languages. Our official language is English, and all of the old phone systems just used English. But I wanted to be able to offer some other options, and Asterisk gave me that opportunity. In Vienna, we found a full set of German voice prompts for Asterisk. In South Africa, we wanted all the prompts to be in South African English, different pronunciation. And we also wanted Afrikaans to be available. In Singapore, we wanted to greet the callers with Mandarin. So we found the free prompts for both South African English and German. We produced our own set of Afrikaans prompts and Mandarin prompts. And I thought you guys might want to listen to what some of these greetings sound like.
TWR verwelkom u. For English, press 1. Ons kantoor is tans gesluit vir 'n publieke vakansiedag.
Here it is in Mandarin.
谢谢你来电 TWR 环球媒体。今天是公共假期，如果你已经知道对方的支线。
And I've heard German right out here in the lobby.
Willkommen bei TWR Europa. Bitte wählen Sie die Durchwahl Ihres gewünschten Gesprächspartners.
And when I'm setting up Asterisk, my first thing to do is set up a test extension and play out TT Weasels, because I love it. Well, here's TT Weasels in South African English.
Aardvarks have eaten our phone system.
I love it. Here's another challenge I faced. One of the services that we can provide with Asterisk is to give overseas offices access to long-distance calls in the US and avoid the toll charges. So I route these calls all through our North Carolina server. And here's how it worked at first. Dirk Mueller, one of our guys in Vienna, wants to call my cell phone. So he calls with a special prefix, and that gets routed to our North Carolina server. The North Carolina server relays that call out to the cell phone and uses the main US number for TWR as the caller ID. Now, say I can't pick up that call. So I say call back on my cell phone. It goes to the North Carolina server and gets no farther. Dirk never hears back from me if he doesn't leave a message. So I needed a better way to do this. So now what I do, Dirk calls the same number in Germany or in Austria. He calls the North Carolina server, and I look at my dial plan looks at the first 2 digits of his extension and then substitutes a better caller ID that will eventually go back to Europe. So I look at the 47. I say, that's coming from the Europe office. I need to use a TWR Europe DID that I've allocated, and I present that to the caller at the other end. Now, when that cell phone user calls back, his call goes directly through to the Vienna office, and at least he can. It's not perfect, but at least he can find Dirk in the dial by name directory or make a guess as to who called him. At least he knows what country the phone call came from. So just how I did this, I assigned a DID for each one of our foreign servers. So there's 8 special DIDs for those. And then I do a database lookup based on the first 2 digits of the phone number that was the original caller ID. And I'll show that to you in the dial plan here. So the top shows the database entries for our Swaziland office and for the Guam radio station. So Swaziland begins with 41, and the caller ID needs to say TWR Swaz. The Guam extensions are 55, and they need to say TWR Guam. So all this data is static, and I just loaded that into the database. And then for the dial plan portion, you can see where I do a database lookup to look at the first 2 digits of the calling number, and then I pick a caller ID based on that. Another challenge is voice quality over the internet. Not all of our regions have sophisticated routers, and in a lot of cases we can't even implement a QoS flag on them. Some of the ISPs that we deal with in third world countries have really spotty service. And they have high latency SATCOM links sometimes. And this is the worst thing. Swaziland is, like I said, the land that the internet forgot. I typically get 2 to 3 seconds of latency in the link between us and Swaziland. I can initiate a call, but I can't get a voice stream going. I can't get the media stream to come up. And we're still working on this. We're working with rolling out new routers, sending network specialists around the world to try and help with that. But some of these problems are just very difficult. So here are some of my top recommendations for you if you're going to use Asterisk in your company. Participate in the community. Rely on it and support it. Give back to it if you can. A few examples of the resources that I use: the Asterisk users mailing list. There's a lot of noise on that mailing list, but there's a lot of good information too. And if you search the archives, almost every time that I've thought, man, I'm at my wit's end, I'm going to send something to the users list, in the process of formulating that message, I come up with a solution. And so it's a good mental exercise just to go through. There's a lot of blogs and forums. I mentioned Warren's blog. There's a wealth of information out there. There's an Asterisk documentation wiki that you can participate in, and you can give back to the community by writing documentation. And also I recommend that you report bugs. You'll probably find the bug that you found already in the bug tracker. But if you don't, report it. Use good hardware. I use Digium cards. It's the only card brand that I have experience with, and I'm very happy with it. I never have to wonder if the drivers are going to work. But there are a lot of other card vendors that are good, so, but use good hardware that comes with good customer support and a good warranty. I buy some of my stuff directly from Digium, but I do have a favorite hardware reseller. If you're looking for a hardware reseller, I recommend E4. These guys have outstanding customer service. I'll give you a little story. I ordered the incorrect card, that dual span PRI card. I ordered it in the wrong format. I needed a PCIe version. I ordered the PCI version. I called E4 up after I ordered it, and they turned it around in the transportation channel. I never saw that card. They sent me the right one. And I was just really impressed with that. Get training for your staff. In addition to the instructor-led classes that Digium provides, they also have a new course called Asterisk Essentials. It's a web-based product. It's very cost-effective. If you take the instructor-led classes, they come with hardware. They come with a TDM card and a PRI card. I use those. The PRI card I used in my production server for a while, and I use the TDM card at home. And as I mentioned, another good place for information is the O'Reilly books. I highly recommend you standardize your endpoints. There's a plethora of, go to the free PBX booth in the exhibits hall, and you'll see the SIP phones that you can buy. It's really interesting and intriguing for me to go play with different kinds of phones, but for users that need to be trained on how to use the phones, every time you put a new phone in front of them, it's a little different. So standardize the endpoints. It makes training your staff easier. It also makes relocating employees easier. And it's just makes life easier for bulk provisioning as well. Test, test, and test again. A lot of the reason that my installs went as smoothly as I did is I spent a lot of time testing. And dial plan code can be tested very easily. You can use a test extension like I do and try out new macros, try out new recording files, all kinds of methods. You can do that all with test extensions before you turn it live. And I really recommend that. And my last recommendation is unify. Unify your greetings and your messages. For a very small fee, Allison Smith will record custom greetings for you, and your installation, your Asterisk server comes across as a very, very professional install. We used a perky young gal who did uptalk, you know what I mean? And she recorded our first set of greetings. And recently we had Allison do ours, and I'm very, very happy with that. So far, we have more than doubled the number of people at TWR that are linked together with VoIP. And we also use Skype for Asterisk to reach out to partners and friends that don't have Asterisk systems in their offices. Unfortunately, Skype for Asterisk is no longer available, but you can buy a subscription to Skype. It's a SIP connector that you can get, and that could be an alternative. But implementing Asterisk has been very, very successful at TWR, and will continue to save money and realize savings as we go forward. But most importantly, our people are connected with each other to do their ministry more effectively. In South Africa, in Swaziland, in Vienna, in Singapore, on Guam, on Bonaire, and here in the USA. If you have any questions about TWR, I'll be available. And I want to thank you again for coming.
So we do have a roving microphone if people have questions, or I'll try to pass the microphone around and have some questions answered.
Actually, I have two questions. First one is, in your corporate office in this country and in other countries, you seem to have stuck with a PRI interface as opposed to going all SIP with your providers.
Yes.
So the question is, why did you choose to do that from a financial or a technical standpoint? And the second question is, do you use Dundee anywhere, or have you considered using that anywhere?
The answer to your first question is I really didn't want to break what was working. So in our US office, we had a single PRI. We've now expanded that to 2. And it worked very reliably, and we have an agreement with Time Warner Telecom for unified communications, I think is what it's called, it's called integrated services. And so we get a very reasonable rate on our PRI. The one place where we had some experience with SIP trunking was in Canada, and it was a disaster. And in fact, I went back and I rebuilt their system with a TDM interface. And about half the time, their 800 numbers would say your call can't be connected. They just had a lot of trouble with the carrier there. So I'd like to get more into SIP trunking, but I haven't done it yet. The answer to your second question about Dundee is no, we have not implemented Dundee yet. When I first started doing this, I thought Dundee would be a great idea, and then the install schedule got ahead of me, and I wasn't able to do it. So yeah, eventually I'd like to use Dundee though as I upgrade our servers.
Another question back here.
We're thinking about doing the same thing. We were trying to get India and like Dubai and some other offices. Question for you is, did you have to pay for dedicated lines between all the international offices to guarantee your quality of service, or were you just using like a high bandwidth connection into the open internet?
We have VPN tunnels between all of our main sites. So we just ride the traffic right on those tunnels. So that was already part of the infrastructure that was in place. I didn't have to put anything else in place. But we do ride on the open internet. We just use VPN on top of that.
I was just wondering if emergency services has been a concern and how you deal with it if it has been.
I was real careful with emergency services. I have a section in my dial plan for that, and of course the numbers are different for every country. But one of the things I do is I test that, and in North Carolina they're real sticky. They want some analog lines to call back on for 911 calls, for example. So I still have a couple of analog trunks, and that's all they're used for, is emergency services callback.
Just a quick question. You mentioned some quality issues as you rolled out. Did you have other day 2 type issues, and how did you report on them? And I'm thinking CDRs for your team as you moved into that group.
CER.
Yeah, recording for your agents, getting your call records and who's calling whom.
It's interesting. We're primarily a fundraising organization in the U.S., and then we raise funds to support the media production and broadcast in foreign countries. So most of our calls are donor calls, and so it's our revenue stream. Our Cisco Call Manager system would keep 30 days of CDR records, so what I do is I roll the CDRs once a month, and don't really have any quality problems with that. I keep a year's worth of records, and I have never been asked to go back and do any data mining on those, not one time. So I do the same thing in every office. I keep them for a year. I throw away the month that's the oldest, and at the month I roll my CDRs. But didn't really have very many day 2 problems. One thing that I did run into just recently, I upgraded our North Carolina server to version 1.8 certified, and had a problem with dealing with the Facts for Asterisk license that I already had generated. So those are just kind of normal hiccups when you're dealing with building Asterisk from source.
Other questions? Oh, here's one right here.
Do you implement some PSTN failover in case of internet access is out of services?
It's interesting that you asked that. About a week ago, our telephone provider has an AdTran box in our facility to provide those integrated services, and it had a hiccup. Our T1s all went down. And so I needed to swing over to our backup server, but I do have a warm backup server, and I'm going to be installing one of the Digium R850s in our facility there, so that we'll be able to go to a hot backup more easily.
Any other questions? All right, let's give a warm round of applause to Cassius.
Thanks very much.